Hello! Is there a God? Is there a great genius painter, or is it all a figment of our monkey brains? A need to find meaning in a meaningless universe, or is Darwin giggling in his grave at the thought of consciousness? Or is there, as Shakespeare wrote, more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy? Welcome to another Zoom meeting and podcast of Here's Tom with the Weather, where we investigate the plethora of higher powers that populate the vast universe of 12-step recovery, where alcoholics riff out on steps 3 and step 11 as prescribed by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, who encourage us to find some kind of higher power. Here at Tom, we promote tolerance and empathy for folks who might just have different spiritual practices than us. It's all about live and let live. And please remember, this is not an AA meeting or an NA meeting. It's just some people's version of the truth, whatever that may be. And just a quick message, we run this account for free, so we welcome any of your contributions to PayPal. At PayPal at the email address gilwriter@hotmail.co.uk. That's GILWRITER@hotmail.co.uk. Anyway, back to the business at hand. Sometimes we talk to seekers, to gurus, and people not necessarily in recovery, but today we are. Today we're speaking with Preacher Jon Ruby. After almost losing his life in 2005 on the streets of Ottawa, Jon Ruby had finally hit rock bottom. The drugs he was using stopped working, and he was unable to take his own life. He sought refuge in a homeless shelter and enrolled in their addiction treatment centre, and thus began his recovery journey. After treatment, his family was reunited, and back home with his wife and 2 children, he began his journey to stay sober. And to stay sober, he realised that recovery was a full-time gig, and service to others was a big part of that. In 2006, he started working with men that suffered from mental illness, and later within that organisation transitioned to lead and develop the Addiction Treatment Centre that continues to serve addicts all over Ontario today. In 2015, he went out on his own to start Union City Church and develop initiatives to build a healthy community that nourishes others on their recovery journey. He's the founder and educator at Life Lab and Ashes to Rubies, and in 2018 launched their social enterprise called Carlington Booch, a kombucha company whose mission is to booch the gap. John and his wife Vicky continue to stay sober by helping others and passing on the message that was so freely given to them. Welcome. And I can't wait to booch the gap, John. It's lovely to thanks very much for coming along here, and what a word the booch is, mate. So just wanted to ask you, that's kind of like the very short version, but I'm always interested to hear people in recovery and who get into service. How can you give us a sort of description of what it was like in the lead up to you getting sober or getting clean, as it were? What was it like for you, and how did it happen? How did you get sober?
If you believe in hell, then that's what it was like. I just thank you. It's an honor to be with you all today, tonight. I think in your time. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for hosting this channel and the ability to be able to talk about spiritual things and whatnot. You made me laugh when I was introduced as a preacher. I hate preaching. I don't like public speaking to begin with. And when you say preacher, it has a negative connotation in my mind, and it's the kind of thing that I feel like for me, I just ended up there. It's kind of like a stripper. No one chooses to be that necessarily. I just ended up there. And before that, yeah, I don't. Are we okay to say some certain? Can we talk? Okay, we can
talk. I've known a few, definitely. You go. Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't look at it it wasn't my job in grade 8 looking for the job when I'm best suited. Preacher didn't come up. I ended up there. But yeah, before that, it was, I got into the addiction when I was in probably grade 10, 11, working with a lot of people that I have worked with. It's very, I was a little bit older to start my addiction, but I made up for lost time, let's say. And as soon as I touched alcohol, my problems went away. Didn't really matter what my problems were, but I didn't have them. And what I've come to really understand is that my real problem is that which alcohol takes away. And then got into drugs and progressed into the beautiful life of addiction and in and out of jail. For me, when my son was born 25 years ago, I was in jail, and it was the first time that I saw him. Baby mom took him to me. And so that's kind of where my addiction went. I don't like talking about my addiction too much because it separates us. We need unity, and I like to really talk about recovery more than addiction. We all
Sure.
have addictions. I know that I work with some guys that are, if you want to call it high bottom, or not a lot of consequences, and you say you went to jail, and they're like sitting in the back row going, "I never went to jail. Let's go to
Mm.
the beer store and let's. I'm not alcoholic. I don't have that problem. That guy's nuts."
Sure. Mm.
But I ended up just in 2005. My disease just got progressive and progressive. I lost the ability to choose, and that's a strong realization when I realized that I wasn't in control. I wasn't choosing. When I hear rock bottom, I think rock bottom is death, and I don't think rock bottom motivates me very well. It causes guilt and shame, and it causes disturbances in my life, and I try to put behaviors. But my real get help and motivation is, one, I realized that I wasn't in control. I had no choice in what I was doing. I remember towards the end, I was on sick benefits, on EI, government disability. And I remember getting that check in the mail. And this point, I was at my parents' house. I owned a house, but kind of gave that up and moved in with my parents. And every second Wednesday, the check would come to the mail box, and I would go get that. And I remember going to the bank, cashing the check, and then I don't remember anything else. And I would come to in some crack hotel, 3 days later. And my intentions was to pay my bills, pay my phone bill, all of those things. And I don't remember walking out of there. And it's a scary place to be. And then number two motivator was, everything that I was using stopped working. So my solution to life had actually stopped working, and it was puking on me, regurgitating on me. And so it was a really dark place. And so I realized I had no choice in what I was doing. And then the things that I was using was causing instant psychosis. So I would have a couple beers and I would be paranoid and looking out windows and thinking things were chasing me, and it was a horrible place to be. And I thought my only option was to end my life. And so I didn't want to hurt myself. I'm too proud for that. But I just figured if I consumed enough toxins, I would just not wake up. And it was a very dark place to be. And I had what I would say a spiritual experience, which led me into getting in a homeless shelter. A couple interventions that led me to get into a homeless shelter that had a treatment center. And I don't know if anybody's seen Intervention, the show. All their loved ones go to like the beautiful mountains of British Columbia. Not my family. They dropped me off at a homeless shelter. Here you go. But that's what I needed. I needed the love of being in an environment which I was really uneasy in. I was never homeless, so to say, but it was a very uneasy situation to be in. So that's kind of where I started my journey in 2005.
When you say spiritual, was that when they dropped you off? Was that your spiritual experience? Was that your white light experience? Or
No, that was me crying.
Did your head hit the ground or something? Or what was the spiritual
that was
experience?
me manipulating baby mom to take me for one last dinner at a restaurant. Then she dropped me off at the homeless shelter. No, before that, I was up for days, doing the drugs that I do and the alcohol that that fuels everything. And I was sitting in my car. It was evening. I'm in a parking lot in the east end of Ottawa, and I was just waiting for the next thing to do. I'd probably been up for about 5 days. It kind of gets blurry at the 3-day mark, but probably 5 days. And I remember the sun setting, waiting for my phone to ring, waiting for the next thing. And in my head popped a thought, and it said, as you were abandoned and abused, that's what you're doing to your children and the ones you loved. Because I was adopted when I was 2.5 years old. Came from a situation and was adopted into an awesome family. And I had never thought that the worst thing that happened to me, my biggest pain in my heart, was that, because in my adult mind, you're very lucky to be adopted from a bad situation. So I had that thought in my head. And then I was showing, I saw four pictures, four real flash pictures. One was in jail. One was in a violent gunfight. One was in a white padded room in a straitjacket. And then one was like a TV that goes snowy. And I felt compelled that I had to pick one of them. And so I'd been in jail 4 times at that point in my life. I'd been in psychiatric treatment twice, and I've been in a lot of violent situations. So I knew those options, and I felt compelled to pick the snowy white TV, and I didn't know what I was picking, and then it all went away. And I don't know what happened after that. I have no recollection of what happened, but it motivated me to go to my dad and just say, I need help. Like I can't, I'm out of control. I have nothing. I'm living hell, and I'm 30 years old at this time. So that was my first kind of spiritual experience, I would call it. The next one was I was at my parents' hiding out to get into treatment, and every time I got that little paycheck, I would go use. And to get into the treatment center, you had to be 3 days sober, and every time it was Wednesday. Wednesday was my go in and pee in a cup day, and Tuesday my check would come, and I could never pee. The appointments were exactly timed every 2 weeks, and I kept picking up that check, trying to do the right thing and using. And then one Tuesday I go look for my check. It's not there. And Wednesday comes around. I manipulated baby mom to take me for a nice steak dinner. You know, that's what I deserve on my way out. I've wrecked your life and all that stuff. Could you please take me for a nice steak dinner or lunch and drop me off at the homeless shelter? And so I get into the homeless shelter. I pee in a cup. I pass. It was like the first test I remember passing, and it was a great feeling. I've passed, and now my passing introduces me to this treatment center up in a 4th-story building of a homeless shelter. And the next day, my mom, I talked to my mom because there's no phones. I just had to phone, and she just says, "Hey, honey, I got a check for you. It came in the mail, but it came to the neighbor's house." And I was like, I laughed because I was so weak that I couldn't even help myself. And I felt like there was a power greater than me intervening for me because it was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And that's how I got into treatment. It wasn't really like I couldn't even get there with my own good intentions.
That's a great mystical experience. Some would say that's amazing. Did you have any spiritual religious background? Was there any dogma, and was your adopted family Christian or any particular religion? Or were they fervent, or were they what was your spiritual background like before you got sober?
I grew up in that, and I never felt it, but I grew up in it. I did feel, and I grew up in when I was adopted at 2.5. My dad was actually in Chicago at Moody Bible College, and then Toronto for seminary, and then to the great outdoors, what every great Christian couple would do with 2 adopted kids would go to Asia and do Bible translations and be missionary. So I actually grew up in the mission field for 9 years. So I grew up in Indonesia, right near Jakarta, a place called Bogor at the foothills of Bandung. And so that's where I grew up for 9 years of my life. And it was a great time. And I grew up in church. And so I didn't really speak Indonesian. It's very organized, very orthodox church. We came back to Canada, and my dad preaches in various numbers of churches, but I remember saying a prayer once and, you know, all that stuff. And my mom was the Christian club in Asia, and she had the flannel graph and you know, the ark and the animals. And so I knew all the stories, but I never felt anything. I never felt a spiritual experience except condemnation and judgment. And so I have a touch of ADD and a curveball of dyslexia, And back when I went to school, they basically just learn it out of you, beat it out of you, do enough homework. And I always had that feeling that I was never good enough. I had speech problems. And so I was in the special classes, but, school was a challenge. And this, church life, I was like the preacher's kid, the missionary kid. So I had this expectation, but I never felt it. And so I just felt the condemnation, the judgment, I have to do these things to be good. That's kind of how I grew up. And so with that, I've had that my whole life. And I had that issue in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It just says that irritable, restless, and discontent spirit. And I've always had that. I've always felt that there was a mallet over my head waiting to come down to smash me, to judge me because I was bad. I was always doing something wrong, that kind of thing. And so that's what I meant by alcohol actually relieved me of that problem.
I understand.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say my problem is what alcohol actually relieves me of, or drugs relieve me of. I can see my problem there. I don't have an alcohol problem. I have a life problem.
Interesting. You talk about adoption. I'd like to go back to that actually. But just so did you feel like you sort of succumbed to it after you got sober and you found service and you found you sort of I guess you took to with a bit of zeal. So you took it to the streets. Tell us just a little bit more in depth of how you because you're a community organizer, you do a lot of great stuff on the streets. You roll your sleeves up, you muck in, I guess, is what people would say in Australia and England, is we talk about mucking in, and you get you're at the coalface. How did that happen? How did you, because you've had this sort of judgmental, quite dogmatic Christian thing in the background. How did that segue? How did you find your step 3?
Yeah, I got mucked up.
Yeah.
I went to the kind of church where the women wore the head coverings. Like that was very, very, I guess, religious. And when I was at this homeless shelter, they taught this concept about being God, this ultimate authority. Do you follow the rules of the road? Do you follow the boundaries that are even set up, the constraints of society? And I would say no. I would do what I want, how I wanted, lived however I wanted. Sometimes got caught for it, but they introduced that concept of God, and so they said, "Have you done a good job playing this power in your life?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Like I'm at freaking a homeless shelter, so the answer is going to be no." So that was my introduction into God, as I understand him, as a relationship that will relieve me of all of my powers. And they promised me that God would do for me what I can't do for myself. And I had that little experience about the paycheck. And so I kind of pursued that, and I laugh because if you were 2005 and you were my intake worker and you said, oh, little John, we have been expecting you for a long time. You've had a hard addiction out there, and you just come in and we'll get you sober, but you're gonna have to go to church. You're gonna have to help other addicts, and you're gonna be an ordained minister. You'll actually be able to marry people, and you'll know a man named Jesus. And I would have punched you right in the throat, and I would have left. But the program of recovery gave me the ability to really understand, experience God for myself. Experience power that could do for me that I couldn't do for myself. So that's kind of where I started, was at the homeless shelter. And they said the only way out of here was to go through the 12-step process, get a sponsor. They kind of told me that sobriety is, not the goal. Like I don't have an alcohol problem. I have a life problem. If I could solve my alcohol drug problem, then I would have done that before. I have no power. I have no choice. It's only God's grace that's going to separate me from that. And so that's kind of where I began in that. And all my nightmares came true. I honestly say I've been divinely inconvenienced against my own will for 15 years. That's me mucking in. It's like, that kind of thing. In step 3, it says, turn my will and my life over to the care of God. One thing that I've been meditating on is I can go through my day and I just go, I got to turn this over. I got to let go of this person. I got to just let go of my wife's attitude. That's actually me playing God because I'm choosing what to turn over. The text is actually telling me to let go of everything and everyone, including my own life. And so when I did that, I was able to stay sober. And that's just an outcome of my relationship with this power. And I had trouble at the very beginning. You know, it took me 2 years to get 1 year continuous sobriety. So it wasn't like all fun and games of just turning over my will. It was a slow, painful death of a couple of relapse outside of rehab, maybe 6, 7. You know, coming home to a woman that I'd been with 15 years already since high school, and we've had 15 years of addiction life, and now I'm coming back as a man of the house. And wow, that's a hard journey. And that's why we need the fellowship. That's why we need the unity. That's why we need the recovery.
Yeah, I'm sort of speaking because there's a few people in this room actually who do, a lot of us do a lot of service in this room. There's a lot of people who do service in many different ways, and I'm looking at a certain Sarah P there, and I know she does an amazing lot of service, as does Ricky and Joe and all of us. But what was it that set you on the service path? Because I know that's played a fundamental part. It's been a huge change for me, a sea change of my whole life in terms of a dedication to service. What was it? Because I found for myself that there was an event that happened for me, and I won't go into it, but there was an event that happened that set me on this course, because if I'd have kept on going, I probably would have gone to one meeting a week and done the literature for the rest of my life. That would have been it. So I've changed. That's changed for me. What was there something that happened in your sobriety that set you off on the sort of the service thing and taking it to the streets? Because it's very inspirational what you're doing.
Yeah, like I said, I ended up here. It wasn't a plan. I think at the beginning, just a lot of recovery people just cheering me on. No one told me what I had to do or what not to do. At the beginning of the book, they show me that if I want what they have, this is the precise recipe. It is a book of suggestions to get this certain result. It's not you pick and choose like a buffet. So I started thinking like that, where it's like they've actually told me that my problem lies in my mind. My mind is where the problem lies in. And so I had to turn over, it's my thinking. My thinking leads to my action. So I actually had to dismantle my thinking. And in my early recovery, I'm a truck driver by trade. I have my truck license, heavy equipment. And then before I got into treatment, I was in the elevator union. So good paying jobs, good careers, that kind of thing. So on the other side of recovery, outside of treatment, I got into heavy equipment. It's just easy for me to get into. So I was doing the average 8-10 hour days. And so just like you said, it's like I started going to one meeting, missing meetings with my sponsor, missing some commitments here and there because I'm tired, that kind of stuff. And so I had a little revelation. I go to the yard. We're digging a runoff pond system, and so big equipment, and we're in clay. So when there's a little bit of rain, machinery and clay don't mix. And so they actually told me to go home, and I had the day off. So I called my dad and said, "Hey, would you like to make me breakfast? I've already inconvenienced your life a lot, so making breakfast would be good, and I have a little video to watch." And so I was watching the video with my dad, and it's a teaching video, and it was a preacher talking about seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be given to you. And I was like, that's backwards in my thinking, because I do all these things and then I seek, recovery. And so that day I just said, all right, I can get me a job. My resume can get me a job. Anybody can get me a job. You got me sober. Now get me a job. And I'm going to make it hard because I'm not going to look for a job. I quit my job that day, told my wife things don't stress her out like that because I've stressed her out for 15 years. So she's like, oh, wow, that's going to be interesting. So I quit my job and went where I thought God would be. And so it was volunteering here, going to this study here, going to AA meetings, doing coffee, doing this, doing that, whatever it was. I find in early recovery, you do a lot of moving jobs. So I did a lot of moving jobs, and so that was the beginning of my mind changing and my actions following. And so it was about 8 months of just volunteering, and I hung out with this pastor, and I was his, tag along crackhead, ex crackhead, and he taught me a lot. We go to the hospitals and we pray for people. We do whatever they do, right? And I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't trying to get a job. And we went to a couple food banks. There was groceries on our doorstep a few times. There was gas in the car all the time. We always had enough. And about 8 months in, I had a little man, French guy. And one of the places I volunteered was called Jericho Road. It was a housing ministry for mentally ill guys, care homes, and a second stage kind of. And so he just offered me a job doing overnights. And I said that would be great. I had a tear in my eye because I felt like this was God's provision for me. It was $200 a month more than what we needed to survive. And I was making $7 an hour. And that was low.
Wow.
That was whatever, the bottom. That's the bottom. I'm coming from the truck driving and elevator union. And there's no pension, there's no nothing. And 2 months, and so I'm not a minimum wage worker. But now I'm surrounded, and this is the reconstruction of my ego, because that's where my problem is. And so now I'm not this minimum wage worker, but I do work with minimum wage, the ability for them, and I'm judging them, and I haven't got a review, I haven't got a pay raise, and it's 3 months in now, and I'm becoming dissatisfied with the provision that I have. But God knows exactly what I need as his child. He's the parent, he has the responsibility, and my job is to show up every day and do his work well. But I have to be connected to him on a daily basis, and my ego separates me from him and from you. And so I, even in recovery, can start getting back into the problem. And so that's how my recovery has gone. I've really realized that I can construct this ego that separates me from the sunlight of God and from my man, because I'm judging everybody. And so that was, the job that I had, caring for men with mental illness that never paid me back, that never really cared, I took that on to the best of my ability, but those things still popped up, and I had to challenge my thinking, challenge my ego. And out of that, for about 6 months, I did that job. And then I got kind of, not a promotion, but hey, could you do recovery home over here? Like, we don't have a recovery home. Could you start a recovery home? And I'm like, of course I can. I got like 1.5 years of recovery, and I got the recovery cape going, and you pay me $7 an hour. Of course I'm going to do that. And so what a train wreck that is, because I go from working with guys that love me, like I give them their medication, I cook for them, I take them to Dairy Queen ice cream every second day. My wife comes in and does art with them. Now I'm starting to work with addicts, and they're all against me. They're stabbing me in the back. They hate me. I'm the authority. I'm like, I'm one of you. Like we're all friends here. But as a child, we go through school, and we don't start with university. We don't start with high school. We start with kindergarten, and that's the journey of God changing my thinking and my constraints of what my reality is. And what I've come to really understand is that I'm a spiritual being trying to have a human experience. And to be human really is to do the will of God, to do the work of God, to serve others, to love others. And so that's my experience that I'm having. I'm trying to have a human experience through the spiritual connection that I have with God.
I was going to say, there's you can do a lot of service, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a lot of payback, and it's not always pleasant. That's for sure. I can tell you that. I know that firsthand. Just quickly, I'm going to hand it over to Joe. Joe's going to be taking over from me for a while. In November, he's going to be taking over the host role, so I'm going to hand it over to him in a bit. He's our hardcore atheist. He's going to give you some really hard questions. No, he won't. He's a nice guy. I just wanted to talk to you about adoption, and it's something I didn't realize about you. Do people who are adopted, do they have it worse? And because I know I've got some personal history with that. Not myself, I wasn't adopted, but there's things like the sort of the detachment from your natural born parents. There's sort of physiological reasons why a lot of this happens to people who are adopted. There seems to be a lot of people who are adopted in AA and NA and who end up, through whatever trauma or of separation, whether they're as infants or as babies or through the age. What can you tell us about that? Do you feel like did you start a little bit? Was it worse off for you because you were adopted? Do you think?
Yeah, I think there's some outside factors that play into the condition of my heart. That restlessness, discontent, all that stuff is there, and we do get wounds from our childhood. There is trauma in the rehab center that we run. We have an ACEs test, and it's actually early childhood traumas, and the more that a person scores, the harder it is actually to stay sober. So there's always that trauma that we can suffer as young people. I recently, this is funny that you mentioned that, because 2 years ago, little backstory, I've always loved Corvettes. I don't know why. I've loved Corvettes. I had Corvette pictures as a kid. I had Corvette coloring pictures. My uncle had a Corvette. He would let me putter around in the parking lot in a parking lot in Sudbury. I just love Corvettes. And this guy calls me 2 years ago, and he was my adopted doctor. He was a doctor that did my adoption, and he was involved in hundreds of them, if not thousands.
Thank you.
And what he was doing, what he was trying to do was research on adoption and the wounding behind it. He said he had talked to a couple hundred, if not 1,000 adoptees, and it was me and some other person that had their life on track, which I thought that was astounding. I was shocked at that. And then the other shocking thing he said, he goes, "I remember the day I picked you." He goes, "I personally picked you up." And he goes, "I remember the day I picked you up. I had just got a new car, a brand new Corvette, and I thought I would take the roof off and it would blow your hair and, distract you." And I started crying. And I'm like, I got this weird love for Corvettes at 2.5 years old. And I truly believe as spiritual beings, we can be wounded even in the womb, even, coming out, and it's about being separated. I'm in the womb for 9 months, and then I get thrown out of it. And there's this fear that comes in already because of separation. And I really, truly believe that's my problem. I'm separated from the love of God. I'm separated from my man. I sit on the seat of judgment, and I judge everybody around me. And so that's why I need alcohol. It's a hard job. But we can be affected as really young people in a spiritual way. So if I have this weird love of Corvettes, and a doctor that when I was 2 years old picked me up in a Corvette. I don't know. Maybe I'm just putting things together that aren't there, but I think that's a spiritual thing right there.
Hey, thankfully it wasn't a Toyota, mate. That's or an Edsel. I'm going to hand you over to Joe C. Joe, over to you, mate.
Sure. Thanks, John. That has been fabulous. Just while you were talking, it made me think of a book by a guy named David Ball, who some of us in the room know. He's in recovery. He was adopted. He's done a lot of writing about recovery and, being adopted and the overachieving, which he manifests in him, in his, which he attributes partly to feeling rejected and trying to prove himself and find his place in the world and all that sort of thing. This book is called, if anyone's interested, Parallel Universes. David maybe will use it as a topic one day. It affects a lot of people. And John, I loved your story. I loved how you started off right away with what makes us the same, not what separates us, finding the commonality. I identify with your humanitarian approach to both your spiritual and your material life. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because you must see it in Ottawa, like sort of when you're there on the streets working with people eyeball to eyeball, face to face. What there is this. I call it the narcissism of small differences, right? The believers and the pragmatists, pointing fingers at each other's, the harm reductionists versus the abstinence-based people arguing with each other about, what other people need and what's best. And even in AA, they give out the coins at the end of the meeting. That's wrong. You got to do it at the beginning of the meeting. How are people going to get sober in that room, right? And that seems to be part of human nature, and contrary to the connection that we need for recovery. So if you can talk a little bit about that in your community, and you seem to be a great ambassador, shining the light, not fighting the darkness, and how you've sort of dealt with that in your bid to help others in recovery.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the sides of our triangle in AA is unity. And I think unity is really important. I recently have in the last 2 years, new sponsor down in New Jersey. And he's a well of wisdom. And he always blows my mind of the little gold nuggets. And he doesn't introduce himself as a recovered alcoholic. He introduces himself as an alcoholic. And he doesn't say if you want to introduce yourself however you want. He goes, but we need less division. And that's where he comes from. It's like, I'm alcoholic and you're alcoholic and we're all one big family. And that's how united he wants to be, the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so that's what his gold nugget is. I don't introduce myself like that, but he does. And so, yeah, it was never forced on me when I got into recovery. It was given to me as a child, but it wasn't experiential. I just felt a negative about it. I never saw the positive, and my own journey is my own journey. And I think the beautiful thing with Alcoholics Anonymous is we have a line of transmission. So I just tell a spiritual story, a spiritual awakening, and what that power has done for me. And it separated me from alcohol and drugs. And so when we started the treatment center, we wanted the 12-step approach with the spirituality, the spiritual problem that we look at. And by the way, trauma and being adopted doesn't make me alcoholic. It's what actually alcohol does in my body and my mind. But it causes the spiritual problem, I do believe, in my experience. But yeah, I've most guys that would come into the treatment center, it was a 9-month treatment center. I took out smoking because of the stats, but I implemented it back in because I think as a responsibility, as authority, we have to have people come in authority and respect it. And so if we make unreasonable rules, then it's just a source of rebellion. And for me, it didn't work for the guys. So I implemented a 3.5 kilometer walk every day. More guys quit because of that and healthy eating than by saying you got to quit smoking. These are just things I learned as we go. And so we never made anything mandatory. This is the concept that we're introducing. These are the modules that we do. This is relapse prevention. This is, group dynamics and learning. This is a little bit of counseling, but this is the 12-step approach. This is what the problem is. This is what the solution is. And the brunt, and especially in Canada, we have most guys would come in as agnostic. Lots of guys with very bad history of church and religion, because most of our context in Canada, especially the Quebec side, would be Roman Catholic. And there's been a lot of wounding there as an organized religion. So most guys would come in, in their 25 to 35, and there's no barometer of organized religion at all. And they were the greatest, because we just lead them into an experience through the 12 steps, and they have their own experience. The guys that were the worst were the Christians. The guys that already have the answer, the solution, their religion actually impedes their recovery. And it says that in our book, is we're confined by the constraints of our minds and our belief systems that we really need to abandon. A beautiful thing in our book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't really talk about surrender, although we do have to surrender. There's two choices, die or surrender. So I have to make that surrender when I have outstanding charges. I have to go surrender myself. There's not a lot of options. I go to the cop shop, I surrender. Our book actually talks about abandonment. We build this structure with a cornerstone. They use these building analogies, this archway. The foundation is, passing on the message in step 12. We're building a new building, and they talk about abandonment. I have to abandon everything that I know, the constraints of my mind, what I think about sexuality, what I think about money, what I think about finances, provision, security, social, all of those things. I have to abandon that and get a whole new set of principles to live by. And to me, that is the process of recovery. Recovery isn't about sobriety. It's about connection to God. It's about connection to a spiritual power that will do for me what I can't do for myself. And so that's what I want to lead guys into, is this. I would say that there's different spirits. I've had a spirit of proving myself, of contempt, of judgment. I've had a spiritual condition, and I truly believe that God has a spirit, an essence of love. The most powerful conversations that I've heard about God is love. I remember one girl was sharing her spiritual experience, and she was an atheist. And she was trying to do the 12 steps, and her sponsor says, I need you to write a paragraph on God. And she goes, well, I don't believe in God. And her sponsor just said, just try to write a paragraph. I need something. This is how we do it. This is how I do it. You got to write a paragraph. And so she just sitting all weekend, and she put on a piece of paper the word love, because it came up in her brain. And she goes, I don't have a paragraph, but this is what and I was like, that's the most powerful thing I've ever heard. That God in spirit is love. And where there's love, I think there's true consent. I've been trying to wrap my head around that and meditate this, because God in a religious organization is like, I come in, I say a prayer, I wash my hands, I do the communion, I get baptized, and all my problems go away. That's the prosperity. I need God to fix something in me so I can get back to my life. Love in consensual manner is, I have to dig and root up these things. I call them fears, because that's really what separates me from the love of God. I'm either driven by fear or guided by the light of God. And so I get to dig up these fears and go, in step 7, there's nothing I can do about it. It's take the good and the bad. And I just put it up on the altar, because I can't defer the difference. Even though my motives are good, I still step on the toes of my fellows, and it separates me from the sunlight of the Spirit. And so that's what I really feel, is that I get to lead people into that. It's beautiful. I get to help people that are sober, stark raving sober. There's a friend of mine in the UK that came to me through the YouTube, and she hit me up, and she goes, this program sucks. I hate it. I'm worse off, and my life sucks, and I'm a 12-stepper, and I don't go to this meeting because I got a problem with these people. And I was just like, this will be fun. Do you want to work together? And typically I don't work with females. I'm not scared of females. No, I can be scared of females. Females are intriguing, and I asked my wife and I asked my sponsor, and they gave me the thumbs up. And so I started working with this woman that's 7 years stark raving sober, and I guided her. We just take the 12 steps, and we do the inventories, and it roots out the fear, and the step 4 part that I've really come to understand in a whole different way is I get to see the realization of my hypocrisy. And so because I have these resentments, it's just a part of myself is being threatened and harmed. And I go through the self-esteem and the pride, what I need to be seen to be okay, what I need you to see for me to be okay. I go through the belief systems of female and male relationships, pocketbook, money, how does it affect my money? And then I go to the 4th column. And some people say the 4th column isn't in the book, but it is in the book. And it says, we need to recognize that they are sick people. I like to use disconnected people, just like me. And I go to the realization that my wife is interfering with my freaking life. And it's driving me crazy because she's an Al-Anon and she doesn't work a program and she's an active adrenaline addiction and she's feeding off me and using me and treating me a certain way. And she's interfering with my life. And I get to the realization and it says, have I ever interfered with her life? And I just get struck over the head with a 2x4 because it's taking a look at my own heart and the hypocrisy that I live in. And now I get to go down to the delusion that justifies the fear, because after every resentment, under every resentment is a fear. And I need to get to those fears and have the Spirit of God bring them up and give them to him on the altar. And it's up to him to take it away. And so to me, that's a loving relationship that I get to participate on a daily basis with. Amen.
You good, Joe?
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about the booch, mate. So what is the booch? Tell us about the booch.
Oh man, I love these things. Yeah, it's
a great word. I've got to say it's one of the top 20 words I've heard in the last 6 months. Definitely.
You guys know kombucha? It's an ancient, maybe from Asia recipe that it's a fermented tea. So full of probiotics, full of good yeast and natural bacteria for your gut. It's a beautiful drink.
So just fermented doesn't mean it's got any kind of juju juice or any sort of alcoholic sort of stuff in it, no?
No, there's probably in ours is a 0.02%. We have to keep it minimum, but orange juice, English muffins, they have, because any fermented product will have a bit of alcohol in it, but it will not trigger your
I'm just making people aware of that. That's it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we minimize the alcohol to the best of our ability. So I was in that ministry of Jericho Road and helped develop the treatment center. Today it's a 9-bed treatment center with 2 second stage houses. Still goes today. On the board, I get to have a little bit of a say and cheer those guys on. I have 3 guys that came through the program that are running the program. One of the guys today is running the whole ministry now. It's a miracle. That guy came in, and I remember him, the social worker, he had tried to kill himself twice, and he or 3 times, and he was in the hospital, and his social worker was looking for somewhere to put him. And I don't take guys on a Friday because I haven't interviewed them. I don't know them. You don't want to introduce a guy that doesn't need to be there with, 10 other guys. It's not good. Something inside of me just says, take him. And I saw him on the Monday and I was like, we got the wrong house for this guy. He's drooling. He can't really speak. And today he is running the ministry. It's just seeing guys being raised from the dead is a miracle. So I go to rehab. I'm helping develop and run a rehab, and I'm like, I'm trapped in this. I'm trapped in rehab. This sucks. And I get a guy in. He's 2 months in, and he starts whining and complaining about the walk and the homework. I'm like, I've been here 9 years, and I'm stuck here. Don't complain about the food. Drink your powdered milk, you baby. Finally, I graduate, and I get to do other things, right? And so part of that was really realizing that the recovery community, especially in Ottawa, maybe Canada, there's not a lot of community outside of, some 12-step meetings. And so I really had it on my heart was to start more of a hub. Like I wasn't trying to start a church. That's
Mm.
last on my list of things to start. But that's where I was guided, and we started a charity called Union City Church, and it's about
Mm.
uniting all of us together under one roof to ignite hope and restore freedom. So we come together as a people, and out of that, we have a brand called Ashes to Rubies, and so basically that started off as a monthly show, and we have a YouTube channel. You can see Ashes to Rubies. It's a recovery content and that kind of thing, and Facebook. And basically what we wanted to do is bring story together. So 3 10-minute stories, and anybody in recovery that wants to share their art, we call it giving hope a platform. And so we have 3 10-minute stories of any kind of recovery, and then we have hip hop, spoken word artists, rappers, music singers, songwriters, and we'll have 10 15 people perform. And we've done that for 5 years now. We took a year and a half off. And we started off with 10 people in a room, just going like high-fiving each other, sharing our story. And, the last one that we did in right before COVID, we started 2 now. So we do 2 a month at another place in Ottawa. And our last one, we had probably 120 people in the audience. And, maybe 14 people performing, and it gives a place for a new recovery person to share their story. Since COVID has happened, just in our small recovery community, personally, we've lost 5 guys in the last couple months, overdoses. And 3 of their stories are in here in our recovery pages in our YouTube channel. And it's like, they might have died, but they haven't lost. And that's what we need community for. We need the community and the fellowship, the people that have this problem that is going to kill most of us, and we need to come together. And I don't really care what you believe, but are you running on self, or are you dying of self? And I want to help you. I don't want to help you die, but I want to help you, high five you, and cheer you on, and give you an opportunity to share your story and share your art. And so that's really what we stand for, is just being able to have conversations in addiction recovery. The other side of addiction is codependency. And I thought I knew about codependency, but when I'm dealing with men for 9 years, it's like we just talk this. My wife suffers as a codependent, and what really came to in my recovery 2 years ago, if I can share a bit of a personal story.
Sure.
Because I really truly believe that this is a secular process. It's not linear. We think steps and we think linear, but I have to bring everything back to my step 1 problem, is that I'm the manager. Alcohol never made my life unmanageable. My spiritual condition and me trying to manage it was the unmanageability part. And so what happened 2 years ago is that my wife quit her job. She's Parliament Hill, the cool Parliament girl. And she was there for 15 years, security, paycheck, that kind of great stuff. Our kids are a little bit older. They're in their 20s and independent. And we have no bills. We have no debt. And so life is great. And then something started to happen, man. It's like I'm starting to live in crazy land. And it's not going well. And there's tension and fear and nail biting and just like sleeplessness. And I'm like, honey, there's nothing to stress about. Like, you're taking a year off. Like, the life is great. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And she got into Codependence Anonymous and just trying to figure this out. And then she just, about 3 months into her journey, she goes, there's no one to take me through the 12 steps, because that's why I'm there. And I said, oh, that sucks. And she goes, I need you to do it. I'm like, no, this is, no. I meditated about it. I'm working with this new sponsor. The people that I'm connected with, they led me into the understanding of codependency. And I'm like, I looked at the Codependence Anonymous workbooks, and it's all behavioral management. And I go, I can't fit the 12 steps in this. It's not a 12-step problem. Meeting some guys in the United States really led me into the understanding that the payoff of codependency is adrenaline. So just like my body reacts to the alcohol that produces a craving for more, when the chaos is gone, the codependent creates chaos, creates anxiety, control, fix, chaos creating. That's why the girl keeps going back to the sick relationship over and over. The payoff is adrenaline. So when I started to understand this, I was like, this makes my life make sense for the last 30 years. And so I'm in a corner store screaming at the top of my head going, I am not spiritually okay. I'm not spiritually fit. Like if I got outside problems and my inside is reacting in this way, something's wrong inside of me. And so we started doing this recovery thing together. And her problem really is adrenaline. And at the core of it is this spiritual malady that we talk about in the big book. So we started doing the 12 steps, and by the grace of God, he saved me out of step 3, and my wife and her friend got sponsors, and I was like released from that. And it's been a beautiful journey in COVID of really understanding what recovery is and what connection is. And recently you guys like to talk about step 11, and in step 11 I do this prayer meditation every morning, and I do my own thing, and I do my own fitness thing, and blah blah blah. I love my morning time. I'm a morning guy. My wife is not a morning girl at all. And so it says in the meditation you could invite family into this time, and I felt like this conviction of inviting her into my time. And it was the scariest thing I've done in my life. I've done some things. And I invited her. I go, would you like to do a prayer meditation with me? I feel like, and she lit up. Of course, yeah. When did we start? I'm like 8 o'clock, sharp. We got things to do. And, I got to manage. And so it was one of the most awkward times ever of my life. It felt like we were having sex for the first time again. And I led her into a meditation and a prayer time. And then the book says, let's review our day. So we start reviewing our day. And this woman opened up like a little flower. And she talked. And we had this spiritual connection, this beautiful dance with a candle and the spirit of love. And it went for an hour. And I'm like, all right, I got things to do. We've been doing this for like 3 or 4 months now, and it's an hour from 8 till 9 o'clock. And this is how important it is to connect to God and to each other in a spiritual way, to build and strengthen our connection to God. My phone is plugged in every night because I love to use it in the daytime, but I unplug at night and have to plug it into the spirit of God's love, to be filled by him, to have my ego deconstructed, and so that I can be close to him and do his work well. And so I have to do that every day at this level. And I'm not trying to convict anybody. Like, I don't want to put a behavior thing in anybody that's listening. Our problem persists and gets stronger. And we have a maintenance of step 10 and 11. Maintenance doesn't mean keep doing the same thing. Maintenance is like a plant. If you have a little plant, little seedling, you add a little bit of water, a little bit of sunlight, a little bit of water, a little bit of sunlight. When the plant gets 2 years old, you're adding a lot more water. If you maintain the water that I was adding when it was a seedling, I would kill it. It wouldn't grow. And so my program of spiritual connectedness to God has to grow. And so that's where I am today, 15 years down the road. So I don't want to put that on anybody. This is how it has to be done. This is what you got to do. Definitely not at all. That's what I do in the mornings. And it's been a beautiful time with me and my wife. Sometimes it doesn't go so well. And sometimes I bring up, sometimes I'm dumb. Like while it's coming out of my mouth, I'm like, stop talking. Like I'm taking her in. Like this morning I said, could I bring something up? And I brought it up. And while I'm doing it, I can see her like just like, and I'm like, why am I talking? Stop it. Like somebody stop me, and no one does. But we get to learn and grow and make mistakes. And that's love. We can fall off the monkey bars, but we're not banned from them because we hurt ourselves. What was the question? I totally forgot.
It does. We're
Kombucha.
running out of time now, so I think there's a couple of. I have got a question from the audience, and I think it's a fair enough to ask. And this one sort of says, isn't kombucha dangerous for alcoholics? Roman numeral page 24 in the Big Book states these allergic types can never use alcohol in any form at all. I think that's a fair enough question. What's your reply to that, John?
Yeah, they've done studies. They did this big study on the news out in Vancouver, and there was like kombucha that was hitting like 7%. As a brewer, I know how I could do it, but no one would ever do it. So I think some of the testing equipment is faulty. We know exactly how much is in ours. There are some people that shouldn't use hand sanitizer. There are some people that need to stay away from that. But the reality is that a lot of, if you smell it or if you have 0.001%, it's probably not going to create the allergy in my body, the craving for more. It might mess with the mental obsession. So just like somebody should stay away from bars that need to stay away from pubs, I would go into a pub to help somebody to pass on the message. I would just never go sit in a pub and go, give me a Diet Coke, mate. But yeah, okay. I think that if you drank our kombucha, you would not taste the alcohol in it. There's such little traces of alcohol, but I think that there are people with different experiences. We donate a case of kombucha to the treatment center that I helped start. And the guys love it. The guys, most of the guys that love it, there's other treatment centers that ban it. I think it's like poppy seed bagels. I think it's like cigarettes and coffee. If coffee is going to give you headaches and that's what you're going for ease and comfort, then stop drinking coffee or keep drinking coffee. I think that everybody has to, as you get into recovery, I think that we just have to set the parameters and boundaries for what your addiction entails. Okay. But yeah, totally get
Good
it.
answer, mate. That's fair enough. And thank you very much for that. And thanks for asking that, Mike. So just a couple more questions from me. And these are the sort of the rudimentary, fundamental ones we ask. What is consciousness?
Consciousness is being awakened. I think that I can have a spiritual experience that awakens me. I'm made up of a spirit, a soul, and a body, and when I become conscious of that, I'm actually a spiritual being, that I can connect to the consciousness of God and His power and His love. To me, that's what consciousness is, and I get that through the spiritual experiences, and I become awake to things that I was asleep to.
Okay. Yeah, we got that. So
I might be answering the wrong. I should Google that. That's a good point to Google.
Well, it's a question that comes up, or that I ask a lot of people, and it does explain. It's an interest to me is what is awareness or what is consciousness, and I ask whether could it be, and I don't know. I'm largely agnostic on this sort of stuff, but could it be that it's a trick of evolution that gives us meaning in a meaningless universe, or could it be that it is a divine consciousness that we're all part of? I don't know. So I'm asking you, what do you think? No?
Well, I think it's a consciousness to a power that can do for me what I can't do for myself. That like I look at what alcohol did for me and not to me. And I think that my experience with the power of God is the same idea, where I actually get a buzz out of it. Like, not a buzz, but it being in his, connected to His spirit, gives me life and validation. And out of that, I do these things. But I connect to Him on step 10 and 11. Most people stop doing that and start doing 12, and they become stark raving sober. And they're disconnected from God, doing the work of God. So imagine if I said, let's live like alcoholics, but don't drink. That is madness. Sure. It's no different than living the spiritual life, not connected to the Spirit. And so for consciousness, for me, is being connected to the Spirit. I do these things. Otherwise, it's just behavioral. It's just organized religion. And that's a horrible way to live. And don't drink near beer. I see the comment. I would not drink near beer at all.
That's really good. You've really given me something there. That's really lovely. Thank you. I've thought of that. That's wonderful. So let's just. I've got the one big final question that we always ask. But do you do Zoom meetings? Is there a way that people can get in touch with you? I've put a couple of websites there. But do you do a Zoom meeting? Is there anything if people want to go join in your home group or be part of it? Is there a way we could join you?
We do like a deconstructive 12-step program that I thought everybody needs to go to rehab. So there's a lot of people that we work with that aren't alcoholic and drug addicts, but they got just as many problems as we do. It's called Life Lab. It's a 17-week spiritual awakening workshop, Life Lab, on the Ashes to Ruby's website. We do a noon meeting, noon Eastern, on Zoom every Wednesday, and it's basically a share for 20 minutes, and then we open it up for relating and questions. So it's not a big community. We get 15, 20 people out every Wednesday at noon. We started it because of COVID, just to have a connection with people that are unable to connect. I don't know about you guys, but Canada was locked down we've been locked down for like a year and a half. It's been opened up for the last couple of months. Yeah. So, and then we also do a morning meditation. Every morning we do like a reading and then, life and recovery, that kind of thing.
Great.
We sometimes argue. It gets a little bit spicy.
Oh, we like that. Hey, so Ashes to Ruby's website. So all the details will be on the Ashes to Ruby's website.
AshesToRubies.com. Yeah.
Just for people who are listening, AshesToRubies.com. Okay, so the big final question, and Booch sales have gone through the roof. In fact, it's been phenomenal, and it's gone all over the world. And Booch is like bigger than a certain cola company. And you are rolling in it, mate. And you have you've got all the dollars you can eat. It's amazing. You're super rich, and you decide, what I'm going to set. So I'm going to leave Ottawa. I'm going to buy a big super yacht, and you've christened this massive yacht. You've called it the HMS Booch, and you set sail for the South Sea. You've got all your books, all your favorite books. Unfortunately, you left the big book and the Bible and everything back home, but you've taken all the rest of your favorite books and all your favorite guitars and everything on this super yacht with your wife, and you set sail and you're in loving it. Sun, sea, everything, all the S's you could think of. However, unfortunately, off the coast of Fiji, you strike a submerged coral reef, and the HMS Booch starts to go gurgling, and it's starting to go under really quick. So you chuck the wife overboard. She swims to a nearby deserted island. You've only got time to run down to the library with your plastic bag and find your favorite book. The water's quickly rising in that library. You find your favorite book, which isn't the Bible or the big book, chuck it in the bag, dive overboard, keep it dry, swim and paddle your way to you and the missus can wait for rescue, and you've got this book to keep you company. What's the name of the book and why, and who's it by?
You're asking the ADD dyslexic kid. I read the Bible for dummies, and I read the real Bible. Something on pugs. I love pugs. But I've actually been reading a writer called Francis Chan, Letters to the Church, deconstruction of what church is, what it could be. I'm reading that book right now, but I'm not a big reader. Okay.
Francis Chan.
Yeah,
Francis
Chan. Yeah, Letters to the Church.
Letters to the Church. Well, listen, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic podcast. Really great to meet you, John, and I hope you come back to us, and I'd like to stay in touch with you. After we stop recording, I'm sure there'll be a few people here who might want to just pick your brains and throw insults at myself. So if you wouldn't mind hanging around when I hang up. And just to say to everyone, next week our guest is none other than Noah Levine, or I think Noah Levine, however you want to say that. He's quite well known in the recovery circles, and he'll be joining us next Friday at the same time. Anyway, I'm going to hang up now. If you want to hang around after the meeting and ask John a few questions, please do. And with that, I'm going to stop recording. See you all next week. Woohoo! Well done, John. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That's great. Really great. One of the best ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, well, Joe saved me there. That was great. He always brings it back to the rational world. I'm always up in the clouds. Anyone got any questions? Anything you want to say or anything you want to share? I'm sure Jeb's always got something to say. And has John Schiller left? Oh, he has. Jeez. Come on, Jeb. Good to see you, Jeb. have to unmute there, mate. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jeb, and I'm a grateful recovered addict alcoholic.
Hey, Jeb.
And I enjoyed that self-disclosure story today, and the things that it reminds me about the process of recovery that I've learned in AA and through my studies, and just trying to live the 12 steps. Um, what fascinates me is everybody seems to interpret and practice the process differently. And it's taken me years to accept that my way is not the only way, except it's the only way for me, because it's what's kept me going and involved in the fellowship. Uh, I've never understand why people leave the fellowship. Probably maybe because it no longer feels like a good fit, and it's always been a good fit for me, especially since I found that it was okay to have secular AA meetings. And I think that was in 2013 when we started that here in Denver. And my, when that happened, when we started those meetings and we were able to be totally honest with one another and just stop pretending that we believed things that we didn't believe and stop pretending we were doing things that we weren't doing, and just basing our sharing on self honesty and honesty with others, my 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 life, my program just blossomed, and it continues to grow as I learn more from other people what is working for them. And then, you know, I've objected to some of the, or fought some of the things that Bill Wilson suggested out of his experience. But over the years, I've found that I can do more of those things, at least try more of those things, and get more freedom, more results. And so uh, that's the sort of thing when I listen to someone else's path, regardless of how many months or years or decades they're sober, I think, well, maybe I could at least open my mind and try a little bit of that. So that, your share was certainly something helpful to me, and I've only been doing this a day at a time for 15,500 and no 756 days, something like that. I could be a day off because I'm not obsessing about it. It's just something, but it's something that I claim for myself, and I think it's wonderful when anybody claims 1 day, 1 month, 60 days, whatever. That's why I come to meetings, is to hear that it is working. And thanks for coming here and sharing. And I'm opened up those two web pages to read more about you and what you're doing, your ministries, which is what a life that is. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jeb. Anyone else want to come in? Just raise your hand. If not, we'll let John off. And does Sandra want to come in? Oh, Sandra wants to speak. Oh, here we go. Yes, you do. You just waved your hand. Come on.
No.
Come on, Sandra.
I didn't hear everything. I came late. I just wanted to say bye.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Adios.
Adios.
She's just come back from holiday. She's all very happy. Yeah. All right. See you. Okay. Well, listen, that's been great. Thank John. It's been wonderful, mate. And thank you very much for coming along and joining us. It's been fantastic. So.
Thank you.
All right. All right. See you later. And I'll be in touch, mate. I'll send you the link to this. It's on YouTube and all that. So yep. I'll send you the link. Okay.
And any of our resources on Ashes to Rubies are all free. There are some membership codes that I would give to anybody that wanted to sign up, but they can get a hold of me personally.
Okay, John. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Goodbye.
mate. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Adios. Closing down. 3, 2, 1. Adios.